Have you ever been told you're like hard to love?
Hmm.
It's one of those phrases that can really sting,
Yeah.
especially for autistic adults, who already feel like they're navigating a world that wasn't really built for them.
Right.
And so today, we're going to use this blog post as a springboard to unpack all of this.
Okay.
It's from Cheap ABA, which is an organization that's dedicated to making autism therapy accessible. So the blog post is titled Adult Autism, a Response to You're Hard to Love. And I think it hits on something really profound.
Yeah, it really does.
For people on the autism spectrum, especially adults who spent years trying to, fit in and mask and all of that, to hear that can be devastating.
It can be devastating. And I think, as you were saying, it can also feel like a betrayal.
Yeah.
Like, you've been putting in all this effort all these years
Right.
to try to connect and be understood.
And it's still not enough.
And it's still not enough. You're still too much.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really interesting.
Because the post points out that it's not actually about the autistic individual being inherently difficult.
Right.
The problem is often rooted in the other person's limited understanding of what autism is
Oh, okay.
and their discomfort with anything outside of what we call neurotypical behavior, meaning like, the way most people act and socialize.
Yeah. And so it's like, in a way, it puts the onus on the autistic person to be acceptable.
Yeah.
So to fit in, and this is where I've heard this called masking, right?
Yes, masking is a huge part of many autistic people's lives.
Yeah.
It's this constant effort to suppress natural behaviors
Yeah.
and to try and mimic neurotypical folks.
Right.
Just to avoid standing out or making other people uncomfortable.
Right. And just to be clear, what are some examples of masking?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So imagine having to, force yourself to make eye contact.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it feels, physically painful just to appear normal,
Yeah.
it's exhausting. And it can lead to, serious burnout over time.
That's like you're always on.
You're always performing.
Yeah. You're not just existing.
You're constantly performing, yeah.
And it makes me think about, how many people, especially women, go undiagnosed for years because they've become so good at this.
Right.
And it's almost like society expects them to fit this mold.
Yes.
And when they don't, they're labeled as difficult or weird instead of being understood.
Exactly. And that can have profound consequences for, their self-esteem.
Yeah.
And access to the support that they might need.
So what can you do if you've been told you're hard to love?
Well, the blog offers some pretty bold advice.
Okay.
It encourages you to reclaim your power by simply saying, don't.
Whoa, okay. I can see how that would be liberating.
Right.
It's like, if you don't want to put in the effort to understand me, then don't even bother.
Right.
But wouldn't that come across as kind of aggressive?
It's not about being aggressive. It's about setting a boundary.
Okay.
It's about recognizing your own worth and refusing to accept the limited perspective of someone who isn't willing to see you for who you truly are. And sometimes walking away from a relationship that is draining and invalidating is the healthiest thing you can do.
So it's not about shutting everyone out.
Yeah.
It's about being really selective
Exactly.
with who you let in.
It is.
But what about the fear of ending up alone?
Sure.
Because it's a basic human need to feel loved and accepted.
It absolutely is. And that's where finding your tribe comes in.
Okay.
The blog really emphasizes that there are people out there who will love and appreciate you. Autism and all.
Yeah.
It might take some searching, some trial and error, but those connections are out there.
So you're saying it's about recognizing that your worth doesn't depend on somebody else's ability to handle you.
Exactly.
You deserve love and acceptance for exactly who you are.
You do.
And it's okay to be discerning about who you share that with.
Yes, it is.
But how do you actually go about finding those people?
Well, there are lots of ways, both online and in person, support groups, social media communities, even just striking up a conversation with someone who seems interesting.
Yeah.
It's about putting yourself out there and being open to connection. And sometimes the most unexpected people can surprise you with their understanding and acceptance.
It's encouraging to hear all of that. So
Right.
what we've kind of learned so far is that being told you're hard to love can be so hurtful,
It is.
especially for autistic adults.
Yes.
But it's not about you being the problem.
Right.
It's about the other person's limited perspective. And while that might sting, the key is to remember your own inherent worth.
Yes.
And to seek out people who will celebrate you for who you are. And that brings us to another point that the blog raises.
Yeah.
It's not just about finding acceptance from others, it's about accepting yourself.
Yeah,
Embracing your neurodiversity and recognizing that it's not a flaw to be fixed,
absolutely.
but a fundamental part of who you are.
Exactly.
And this is where things get really interesting, because if self-acceptance is the foundation, how do we start shifting the conversation from just responding to this negativity to actually changing the way society views neurodiversity?
That's a great question, and it's one we're going to dive into next.
Yeah.
So we've talked about that individual experience,
Yeah.
that emotional toll of being told, you're hard to love,
Mm.
but zooming out.
Yeah.
Like, how do we as a society get better at this?
Right.
Understanding and appreciating neurodiversity.
That feels huge, right?
It is big.
Where do you even begin?
Yeah, it's big, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Okay.
The shift starts with each of us. We can't wait for some massive, like, societal overhaul to happen.
Right.
Think about it. Like, how many times have you heard someone say something like, oh, he's just so awkward.
All the time.
Or she's a bit off, isn't she?
Yeah, we just kind of laugh it off.
Right, and that's part of the problem.
Like that casual dismissal of
Yes.
behavior that could be neurodivergent.
Exactly.
Right.
So, first step for our listeners.
Okay.
Challenge those comments.
Okay.
Gently point out that what seems awkward to one person might be someone else's way of navigating the world.
So individual accountability, got it. But this feels like it needs more than just like calling people out.
Yeah.
When they make insensitive remarks like, what about bigger picture solutions?
Education is key.
Okay.
We need to expose people to more autistic voices,
Right.
lived experiences, not just clinical definitions.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if schools taught neurodiversity alongside other forms of diversity.
Oh, that's interesting.
Imagine if workplaces recognized that different brains bring different strengths.
It's like we celebrate diversity in so many other areas of life.
We do.
But then when it comes to how our brains are wired, it's
Yeah.
suddenly about normal versus not normal.
And that not normal label is often code for needs to be fixed.
Right.
But what if instead of trying to fit square pegs into round holes,
Yeah.
we redesigned the environment to be more inclusive?
But that's a really cool thought. Instead of putting the onus on the individual to conform,
Yes.
we create systems that embrace the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about workplaces that are sensory friendly,
Okay.
that allow for movement, breaks,
Mm.
quiet spaces, recognizing that not everyone thrives in a traditional office setting.
Yeah.
Think about social events that cater to different communication styles, not just the usual loud, crowded party.
So practical changes
Yes.
that acknowledge that neurodiversity is a spectrum, not a monolith.
Big-
Everyone experiences it differently.
Right. And these changes aren't just about, like, being nice to autistic people.
Right.
When we design for inclusivity, everyone benefits.
Give me an example.
Okay, so think about closed captioning on videos.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, it was intended to help people who are deaf or hard of hearing.
Right.
Now it's become a standard feature that benefits millions of people who use it in noisy environments.
Yeah.
While learning languages, or even just to follow along better.
That's a great point.
Designing for accessibility often leads to universal usability.
Okay, I'm getting fired up about this.
Good.
So we've got individual responsibility to check our biases. We've got broader education efforts. We've got systemic changes to make environments more inclusive. What else can we do?
Another big one.
Yeah.
Representation.
Yes.
We need more autistic characters in books, movies, TV shows,
Yes.
portrayed as well-rounded individuals, not just stereotypes.
And not just the savant trope.
Right.
Like the autistic person who's a genius at math but can't function socially.
Exactly, because those portrayals can be harmful,
Yeah.
because they reinforce this idea that autistic people are either brilliant
Right.
or helpless,
Yeah.
never just, normal people with a range of strengths and challenges.
It's like we need to normalize neurodiversity, show it as part of the fabric of society, not this anomaly
Yes.
to be feared or fetishized.
And that normalization will help dismantle the hard-to-love myth.
Okay.
When we see autistic people as our colleagues, our friends, our family members,
Yeah.
differences become less threatening, more understandable.
So it's about humanizing the experience,
Exactly.
not just intellectualizing it.
The more we understand, the less we fear, the more we embrace. And that's how we start to dismantle those harmful assumptions that lead to phrases like hard to love in the first place.
So is there anything we can do in the meantime, aside from what we've already discussed, to help people who are struggling with the emotional weight of these labels?
There's a lot we can do. One practical tip the blog offers.
Okay.
This might sound simple, but it's powerful. Seek out resources.
Like what kind of resources?
Organizations like Cheap ABA offer affordable therapy options. There are online support groups, forums,
Uh-huh.
and even just informational websites that can help you understand your own neurodiversity better.
Okay, so knowledge is power. Arm yourself with information, connect with others who get it, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Exactly. And remember, you are not alone. There are millions of people around the world who are neurodivergent, and there's a growing movement to celebrate and embrace those differences.
Okay, so to recap what we've covered so far, being told you're hard to love is a painful experience, but it's more reflective of the speaker's limitations than your worth.
Ah.
We've talked about individual coping strategies like setting boundaries,
Yes.
finding your tribe, and we've explored these broader societal shifts needed to create a more inclusive world. But there's one final piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
and it's maybe the most important one of all.
And that's the power of self-love.
Okay.
It's about looking in the mirror and saying, I am worthy of love and acceptance exactly as I am.
That's powerful. Let's
Yeah.
dive into that deeper. We've talked about societal change. We've talked about practical tips. But I think this idea of self-love, especially in the context of being told you're hard to love,
Right.
I think that's where the real healing begins.
It's absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
And it's probably the hardest part
Okay.
because so much of how we view ourselves is shaped by, messages we've received from others.
Of course.
If you've been told you're too much or not enough,
Hmm.
it can be really difficult to break free from those internalized beliefs.
It's like those messages become tapes that play on repeat in your head,
Yes.
even when you know logically they're not true.
Exactly. So how do we rewrite those tapes?
Right.
How do we cultivate self-love when it feels like the world is telling us we're not worthy?
Give us the actionable steps. How do we start?
Okay, it starts with awareness. Just notice those negative thoughts when they pop up.
Okay.
Don't judge yourself for having them. Just acknowledge them.
Okay.
Oh, there's that voice again telling me I'm not good enough.
So it's like we're becoming observers of our own minds,
Precisely.
noticing the patterns without getting swept away.
And once you've identified those negative thoughts, you can start to challenge them.
Okay.
Ask yourself, is this really true?
Yeah.
What evidence do I have to support this belief?
I love that it's like putting those negative thoughts on trial.
Exactly.
You're demanding proof.
Yes, and often when you really examine them, those negative beliefs crumble because they're based on fear, insecurity, other
Mhm.
people's opinions, not on your inherent worth.
So awareness challenge, what's next?
Okay, this is where it gets fun. Start focusing on your strengths,
Okay.
the things that you love about yourself, the
Yeah.
things that you're good at.
Mhm.
Maybe you're an incredible artist,
Yeah.
a loyal friend, a fantastic cook. Whatever it is, celebrate those aspects of yourself.
So shift the focus from what we lack to what we have.
Yes,
That can be really empowering.
exactly.
But what if those negative voices are really loud, really persistent?
Yeah.
What if self-love just feels impossible?
Don't be afraid to seek professional help.
Yeah.
Therapy can be an amazing tool for unpacking those deep-seated beliefs and developing healthy coping mechanisms.
Okay.
Remember, self-love is a journey, not a destination.
Mm.
It takes time, practice, and compassion.
Be patient with ourselves.
Yes.
Recognizing that it's a process.
It is, and it's about surrounding ourselves with people who support and uplift us, people who see our worth, even when we struggle to see it ourselves.
This has been such a great conversation.
It has.
We started with the pain of being told you're hard to love. And we've ended with this beautiful roadmap for cultivating self-acceptance and challenging these societal norms.
Absolutely.
I feel hopeful and empowered.
Me too. And remember, dear listener, you are worthy of love and belonging, just as you are. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
That's beautiful. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. And remember, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep embracing your unique brilliance.